Welcome back, MTN Giants podcast, previewing a Thursday night football game, the Cowboys at the Giants. The Cowboys are 5.5-point favorites. Both teams come in at 1 and 2. And there, of course, is a lot of history between both of these teams. Now, I did some bullet points. I want to read off some stats before we even get started here. Dak Prescott has not lost to the Giants since 2016. He's 12-0 since the start of 2017 versus the Giants. So think about how long ago that was. That was the game where the Giants won, I think it was 10-7. Janoris Jenkins had that fumble recovery on Dez Bryant, and Odell caught the slant. Like, that was so freaking long ago. That's the last time the Giants beat Dak Prescott. The Giants have not beaten Dallas in general since the final week of the 2020 season in a game where Tay Crowder led the team in tackles. Last season, the Cowboys outscored the Giants 89-17. Yikes. Of course, a lot of that was the 40-0 game in week 1, but the second game against Dallas in Dallas was not much better. Daniel Jones is 1-7 versus Dallas. The only win he had was that 2020 game, the last time they beat Dallas, when Andy Dalton was the starter. Daniel Jones is 1-12 in primetime games. His last primetime game was the one versus Seattle. Did not go well. And this one's crazy too. The Giants have not had a sack against the Cowboys in their past 4 games. 4 full games against the Cowboys, the Giants have 0 sacks. Pretty insane. So a lot has to change if the Giants want to win tomorrow night. And a lot of this could be pointless stats. Some of this is from 2016, 2017, 2020. A lot of guys on these teams are different. But it goes without saying that the Cowboys have had the Giants' number in recent years. So of course, leave a like, subscribe, comment your score prediction, all of that. Let's get into it. The injury news in no particular order. Jordan Phillips, who the Giants traded to Dallas, is going to be out. He's on the IR with a wrist injury. Of course, Dallas corner Deron Bland is still out with that foot injury. He'll be out for another few weeks, I believe. Some more secondary injuries. Kalen Carson, who was going to be their cornerback 2 on the outside, he's doubtful for this game. And Marquise Bell, one of their backup safeties, is doubtful with an ankle injury. For the Giants, Darius Slayton with a thumb injury is questionable. He had that one play where it was a third down play and he tried to catch the ball on the ground and you can see him shaking his hand after, so I'm sure it happened on that play. Drew Phillips, the nickel corner, is going to be out for this game with a calf injury. Hope he's back for week 5. That one sucks. And Adoree Jackson is out as well. So 2 big injuries to Giants corners. 2 of their top 3 corners are out in this game. Of course, Graham Gano on IR. They are going to give Greg Joseph another shot at being the kicker. He missed his 1 field goal attempt from 48 in Cleveland last week. For the Dallas Cowboys offense, they have passed the ball pretty well so far. They have the most passing yards per game in the NFL. Now, part of that is because they've been trailing in games recently. They were down big early against the Saints, and they were down big early against the Ravens last week. Their rushing attack, though, has been awful. They're 30th in rushing yards per game. Ezekiel Elliott does not look very good, looks pretty washed. Rico Dowdle behind him looks decent. Then you have like Deuce Vaughn as their third guy, so nothing too impressive. The reporters were wondering why Jerry Jones didn't sign Derrick Henry last week after Henry destroyed them. That was pretty funny. Tyler Guyton is the rookie left tackle. He struggled so far, has allowed 3 sacks, or 1 in each game, so 3 sacks on the year. There is lots of youth on their offensive line. You have Guyton, you have Tyler Smith next to him, Cooper Beebe at center. All those guys are under 24 years old. Zach Martin is not the same guy he once was in his prime. He's now like 33 years old. CeeDee Lamb, of course, is their number 1 guy. He's not being hyper-targeted like I thought he would be. I figured they would force-feed more targets to him. It's been more well-balanced, but you can tell last week in the second half versus the Baltimore Ravens, Dak was not even looking CeeDee Lamb's way. It was a very quiet game for CeeDee Lamb. It's always scary when an A1 receiver has like one of those squeaky wheel games, and I'm sure he'll get a lot of targets in this game, so the Giants have to be ready for that. Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolbert are the wide receivers 2 and 3. Of course, Cooks is a veteran, has had a bunch of 1,000-yard seasons, but he's on the wrong side of 30. Tolbert's in year 3. He had a pretty good game last week. There is some potential there to make plays downfield, but overall he has not lived up to expectations so far. Jake Ferguson had a good week at tight end last week, 6 catches for 95 yards. I think he's realistically their second option, so a guy the Giants have to watch out for. Dallas, I think, has the best kicker in football. After I've seen Justin Tucker really struggle at the end of last year and the beginning of this year now, and seeing what Brandon Aubrey, the Cowboys kicker's doing, he's a guy I made a video about last year, and his story is very interesting, and he's been so freaking good. There was a field goal he made from, I think it was 51 yards against, I think it was last week against the Ravens. And for most kickers from 51, you're thinking, I don't know, it's probably like a 60, 70% chance this goes in. For Aubrey, it felt like it was an extra point. Like, I just have so much confidence in that guy to knock down every kick. Like, he is insanely good. They have not been a balanced team, of course, the Cowboys overall. As I mentioned, they've been trailing big in the past 2 weeks. I'm sure in a perfect world they would like to be more balanced. We'll see what this game script is looking like. The Giants are not the type of team to come out and be up 21-3 on a team, so I'm sure Dallas can mostly stick with their game plan, and we'll see what they do when a game is close as compared to a blowout. And even in week 1 versus the Browns, the Cowboys were dominating for most of that game. They had that punt return touchdown and whatnot. So the Dallas Cowboys have not really played in a close game this year. So I'm sure they're looking forward to how does this team look when it's in the fourth quarter, one possession game. How do they react? I mean, we have to see. Of course, Dak's been around forever, and we know about Dak, but still, I mean, you want to see how this 2024 version of the Cowboys looks when it's a clutch situation. On Dallas's defense, the biggest change, of course, there's no more Dan Quinn, who's now coaching the Commanders. It is now Mike Zimmer. Zimmer is very heavy on nickel defenses and playing a lot of zone. I believe after week 2, the Cowboys played zone defense like 80% of the time. So they are very zone heavy. Could be a good thing for guys like a Wan'Dale Robinson who can sit down in a zone and catch a 5-6 yard pass. Malik Neighbors, I have no concerns about with his matchups. There was some offseason trash talk about Malik Neighbors, and it was Trayvon Diggs. So I know that Malik Neighbors is kind of downplaying it and saying it's time to go out there and do it. So there was some offseason beef between those guys, and I'm excited to see how that looks. Dallas's biggest deficiency this year has been their rushing defense. They are 31st in rushing yards allowed per game. Derrick Henry tore them up. Alvin Kamara tore them up. Jerome Ford against the Browns had a pretty good game. Well, not against the Browns. He is a Brown. But against the Cowboys in week 1, Jerome Ford ran the ball pretty well. They're also 30th in points per game allowed. Now, looking at the Cowboys Pro Football Reference page, something really stood out looking at their numbers. Now, once again, it's only 3 games. It's not the biggest sample size. But the Cowboys offensively have ran for 221 rushing yards. On defense, they've allowed 557 rushing yards. They ran for 221 and allowed 557. That is a massive discrepancy. Now, there have been, it looks like 41 more rushing attempts when the Cowboys are on defense against them. But still, I mean, that is just insane. I feel like if running games were not a thing in football and it was pass only, the Cowboys might be 3-0 and be, a juggernaut right now. But based on their run defense and how they're running the ball offensively, it has been just a massive downfall for this team so far. The Cowboys' pass defense has still been pretty good. Can't complain about that. But those numbers could also be skewed because, once again, small sample size. But when you're running against a team for, I want to see what the yards per carry is. When you're running for 5.4 yards per carry against the Cowboys, why would you pass the ball? Just keep running. For every 2 runs, you're going to get a first down at that rate. So teams really have no incentive to pass the ball on the Cowboys. So is their secondary actually good, or is their run defense so bad that teams don't have to pass on them? I mean, that's a big question here. Right now, Micah Parsons only has 1 sack. He does have 12 pressures, which is pretty on par for what he usually does. So it's not like Micah Parsons is falling off. He's maybe unlucky so far. You have to watch out for a breakout game from him. The Cowboys' 2023 first-round pick, Mozzie Smith, has been awful. He did nothing the first 2 games. He had 3 combined tackles last week. To take a defensive tackle in the first round, which I don't like doing in the first place, sometimes they end up like Dexter Lawrence and you strike gold. And I'll admit, I was a fool. I was not a fan of the Lawrence pick because of positional value. But when you turn into an all-around great player like Lawrence, it's worth it. But sometimes you get a guy like a Mozzie Smith, who so far, through a little over a year into his career, he's been awful. And the Cowboys got this guy to stop the run. He can't stop anything, can't stop a nosebleed. So he's been rough so far. They still have DeMarcus Lawrence. He's playing pretty well. They still have Osa Odigizua. Of course, his brother was a Giant back in the day for a couple years. The cornerback 2 spot for the Cowboys defense is definitely a concern right now. So they're going to have either Andrew Booth Jr., who was a failed second-round pick by the Vikings, or CJ Goodwin, who's mostly a special teams player, as their cornerback 2. So I'm assuming it's going to be a lot of Diggs on Neighbors. That would make a lot of sense. Jordan Lewis is mainly their slot corner. He's been around for a bit. He's a pretty good player. He'll most likely be on Wan'Dale Robinson or whoever else plays in the slot. But that outside corner, whether it is Booth or Goodwin, guys like Slayton if he plays, and if Slayton doesn't play, this is a massive opportunity for Jalen Hyatt. This is the game he can get right. If Slayton's out and he's playing and Hyatt's playing against these cornerback 3s and 4s and 5s and has that as a matchup, this could be a game where Hyatt might go crazy and catch a couple of deep passes. Now, while Daniel Jones has looked pretty good the past couple weeks, the one thing he still cannot do is pass the ball deep. The Giants have not been good passing the ball deep. The one deep pass they had last week was the one down the sideline where in most cases, that's probably an interception, but Malik Neighbors reached over the corner who kind of stumbled and took it from him. That was Emerson. So the Giants have to have a better vertical passing offense, and so far it has not been that good. And the safeties for the Cowboys have struggled. Malik Hooker, of course, the former first-rounder from the Colts, injury-prone early in his career, but he's bounced back, and Donovan Wilson. Both of those guys have been awful in coverage this year. The Giants have a real chance here, offensively, to score a lot. This is not the Cowboy teams of old that had a great offensive line and a great running game and a great secondary. This is not that type of Cowboys team. This is the worst version of the Cowboys that the Giants have seen in probably 4 years, since 2020, which was the last time they beat them. At linebacker, Eric Kendricks is still there. Eric Kendricks signed over from the Chargers, a longtime Minnesota Viking, played under Mike Zimmer, who of course is now the defensive coordinator in Dallas, so those two reunite. But Kendricks at 32 is still playing at a very high level. So like the front 7 for Dallas is not that bad. The secondary though, besides Jordan Lewis and Trayvon Diggs, you can really exploit that secondary right now. And I want to see Daniel Jones do that. I hope he can. It seems like the Giants have the protection for once, which in most years, the Cowboys have dominated the Giants' offensive line. I mean, most teams have, but the Giants' offensive line has been actually pretty good so far this year. Whether it's just a weird year or Carmen Brasillo is working miracles, which I think, honestly, it's probably more of the latter. But there is good talent, so I'm happy to see that the offensive line is not a reason this team is losing games. Not that losing because of not having a kicker is much better, but you get the point. So I do think the Giants can score points in this game. I don't know if it'll be crazy high scoring, but I do think both teams will do their fair share of scoring. I'm sure CeeDee Lamb will have a nice day. I don't know if I can trust Deonte Banks yet. The ball skills are not there yet. As I said in the reaction video, he's very good at sticking with his guy, but in terms of getting his head turned around and playing the ball, he's had a tough time doing it. So I think the potential's still there to be a cornerback 1 in this league, but right now, at least for Deonte Banks, it's not there yet. So overall, this is a big game, of course. Both teams at 1 and 2. If you fall to 1 and 3, your chances of making the playoffs are pretty slim at that point. And if you're the Giants, I mean, this is the difference between, does the rest of this season look interesting, or do you drop to 1 and 3, and by the middle of October, we're, thinking about next year and draft selection and draft position. So this is a big game. The Giants, I don't want to say they have to win this game, but it's pretty close to a must-win. Their must-win was last week. They got it done, so of course, shout out to them for that. But looking ahead, the Giants' next 5 opponents, including this game, they're very tough, and Jaden Daniels looked very good on Monday night, so they play the Commanders in 6 weeks. So tough schedule coming up. If the Giants were to get this game, that would be massive. Of course, with the Giants' struggles against the Cowboys and, recent years, and honestly, for such a long time now, it felt like ever since 2011 when the Giants, of course, beat Dallas in the final week to win the NFC East and go on to win the Super Bowl, it felt like ever since then the Giants cannot beat them. There was 2016 where they beat them 2-0 in the season series, but besides 2016, ever since 2011, this Cowboys team has really owned the Giants. It's also a little concerning that the spread opened at Cowboys -4.5. Now it's down to -5.5. So I don't really know what to think. I could see this game going a lot of ways. I do like to have a score prediction by the end of it. I did want to have the Giants covering, so I'm going to make this my final score. I'm going to say the Giants find the end zone 3 times, but they come up short. I'm going to say it's 26-21 Dallas, meaning the Giants would cover the 5.5, but I do think the Cowboys would win this game. It seems like a get-right spot for the Cowboys offense, but if the Giants can run the ball effectively, which so far they pretty much have, maybe aside from week 1, and Devin Singletary has to hold on to the ball, which he's fumbled the past 2 games. If they can do that and start off strong, that's another big thing. Start off strong. Don't start out like last week where you fumble the opening kickoff, let up a touchdown on the first play from scrimmage. Don't start off like the Washington game was not much better either. Like, have a game plan, have your scripted plays, go out there and execute them. Don't hold, no false starts. Have an actual drive, the first drive of the game, and actually do something. Get a couple first downs, at least get a field goal. Don't have it be like week 1 where you get the field goal range and then you back yourself up and then you have the kick blocked. I mean, just don't do that. Just find a way to start out strong. This is not a team that I want to get into a 10-0, 13-0, 14-0 hole to, because then they can pin their ears back, rush the passer, get to Daniel Jones, throw out looks that make him confused, which this team has done very well of in the past. Once again, new defensive coordinator, but still, and it's coming to my memory now. I remember when the Giants played Mike Zimmer's Vikings back in 2019, Daniel Jones' rookie year. I remember Jones having a really good game. Of course, Jones has had a lot of success against the Minnesota Vikings, and Mike Zimmer was already off the team in 2022, so that didn't count. I was actually wrong. I'm looking back at it now. This was October 6th of 2019. The Giants lost at home versus Minnesota. I guess I just remember one play. I remember the one play from that game was Jones throwing that deep ball to the left to Slayton for a long touchdown. But that must have been it. The rest of his game was not that impressive. 21 for 38, 182 yards. 4.8 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Also got sacked 4 times. Now, this is 5 years ago, so it's not the biggest deal, but this is one example of Jones playing against a Mike Zimmer defense. But yeah, for some reason I thought he played a much better game, but oh well, 5 years ago, who gives a damn? So yeah, I think if I had to guess once again, I want to be wrong. I know there's a lot of Giants fans that think the Giants are going to win this game. I just kind of have to see it to believe it. We have not beat this team in so long, and they're just as hungry for a win as the Giants are, and I just trust Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb enough to get this done. So I will say the Cowboys win by 3 to 5 points, but I would not be shocked either if the Giants come out and they run the ball well and they pass the ball well. Like, their offense has to be good in this game to win it. I can't see the Giants holding Dallas to under 17, under 20 points. But if the offense comes out and looks great like they did in the first half versus Cleveland, then yeah, they might win this game. So we'll see. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. I do want to make the spread picks now because I'm definitely not going to make a separate video for that. So we'll get into the spread picks for week number 4. All right, Steelers at the Colts. The Steelers are 1.5 point favorites on the road. I did like what I saw from the Colts last week. The Steelers got a pretty banged up Chargers team. I do believe in the Steelers, but I also believe in the Colts. It's a really tough one for me. This is going to be a very run-heavy game. I think I'll go with the Colts here. They got to get back to 2-2. The Steelers, it feels like they're due for a loss at some point, so why not here? I'll just take Indy plus 1.5. If they lose by 1, then hey, I still win. The Vikings are at the Packers, a pretty big matchup for the NFC North. The Packers are a minus 2.5. I would assume that based on that spread, that Jordan Love is back, or either Sam Darnold's out. I would think it's more of the former. I think that Jordan Love is probably back. With that said, I'm still going to take Minnesota as a plus 2.5 on the road. I think they're alive to win this game, of course. I do want to see how Jordan Love looks first. I don't know if he'll come back and be completely agile. I love the way Minnesota's defense has looked this year. They went against a Houston team indoors last week, made them look silly. So yeah, I will take Minnesota plus 2.5. The Jaguars are at the Texans. The Texans are a minus 6.5. Both teams looking to bounce back. I just mentioned Houston got blown out against the Vikings. I mentioned that the Jaguars, of course, they got blown out Monday. It's hard to imagine Jacksonville is just this bad. I didn't have them making the playoffs. I think I had them at 7 or 8 wins this year. But to think they're this bad is pretty unfathomable. So I'll take Jacksonville plus 6.5. of course, I could see the Texans coming out and just beating the crap out of them once again. But for a team to lose that badly 2 weeks in a row, especially a team that has a Super Bowl head coach, and Lawrence does look pretty broken right now, but we've seen Lawrence have his great moments in the NFL. I just can't see them losing that bad again. And 6.5's a lot. So I'll take Jacksonville plus 6.5, but it's a little scary. The Saints at the Falcons. Falcons minus 2.5. The Saints offense came back down to earth last week. The Falcons blew a game on Sunday night against the Chiefs. I'm going to go with the Falcons minus 2.5. I'm starting to like this Falcons team. I feel like their defense is getting better every week. They looked good against the Chiefs last week. The Saints offense, as I mentioned, they didn't look as great last week, and I know Kamara missed practice today, so we'll see how that goes. And the Saints, of course, lost their Pro Bowl center, Eric McCoy. I do think that the Falcons lost their right tackle, Caleb McGarry. So 2 big offensive line injuries, but I like the Falcons a lot. That might be one of my favorite bets, Falcons minus 2.5. The Rams are at the Chicago Bears. Bears are minus 3 at home. Interesting spread for sure. I could see this one being a pretty high scoring game. Only 41.5 over under. I kind of like the over there. I will take Chicago minus 3. Of course, it's a little concerning because I don't think Chicago's that well coached, but at the same time, the Rams have all their injuries and the Bears actually have a good defense. I do think they can get to Matthew Stafford and maybe turn him over once or twice. So I'll take the Bears minus 3 there. Eagles at the Buccaneers. Eagles minus 2 on the road. I may take Philly because of all the injuries on Tampa's defense. I mean, I thought Tampa would win outright last week against Denver, and I did pick them against the spread, which was a bad idea by me. But if they still have all these injuries with Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey and Winfield Jr., then it's going to be tough to take them. Yeah, I'll go Philly minus 2. I don't like their receivers being out, of course. Philly is... it's a team that's going into their bye next week, I believe, and they have a lot of injuries as well, but so does Tampa. Yeah, whatever. I'll take the Eagles minus 2. As I said, I don't love this one. I probably wouldn't bet it in real life, but just based on what I thought from the preseason, I thought the Eagles were a great team. I know they're facing injuries, but that defense looked great last week in New Orleans. That's a tougher matchup than Tampa, so Philly minus 2 for me. Need that defense to step up for sure. Bengals at the Panthers. The Panthers are 4-point underdogs at home. The 0-3 Bengals desperately need a win. The Panthers got their first win last week with Andy Dalton. It is an Andy Dalton revenge game. He can do something funny here. Send his former team to 0-4. And with that said, I will take Carolina. I will. I think, there's a chance that the Bengals win this game by 3 and whatnot, but I do think Carolina can keep this close. Their defense in Cincinnati has been atrocious this year, so I could just see Carolina keeping up with them. And I do think, once again, Cincy might win by 3, maybe 4, but I don't see Cincy blowing them out. So we'll see. I'll take the Panthers plus 4 at home. The Broncos at the Jets. I hate this line. It's Jets minus 7.5. I wish it was minus 6.5. That is a lot of points, though. And the Jets have had a lot of time to prepare for this game. Broncos are coming off their best performance of the year by far. But I'm not comfortable yet taking the Jets as a more than a touchdown favorite. So I will take Denver plus 7.5. I could be wrong about it, but I just don't know what the extra rest does for a team like the Jets. You know what I mean? I guess they have some older guys, and maybe it helps in that way, but I love the matchup for Denver. How you have Surtain on Garrett Wilson. They can try and take him out of the game. So you take away Garrett Wilson, and Rodgers has to throw to Mike Williams and Tyler Conklin, Breece Hall, of course. So there are still weapons there, but that's a lot of points. So Denver plus 7.5 for me. Commanders at Cardinals. Cardinals are favorites by 3 at home. The Cardinals may be without Trey McBride, who suffered a concussion in that game on Sunday. That's a pretty big loss for them, honestly. So with that said, I will go with the Commanders as a plus 3 on the road. I think there's a chance they win this game outright once again. So I'll take Washington. They looked good on Monday. So I know their defense is not perfect. Their secondary is still pretty sus. But the Cardinals missing their second best receiving option, it might be something that's kind of understated from this game. So I will take the Commanders as 3-point underdogs. Patriots at the Niners. A massive spread here. 10 points in favor of the 49ers. You would think that the Niners are healthy with this spread. Debo's probably out again. Kittle is highly questionable. McCaffrey, of course, is in Germany. He's definitely out for this game. With that said, I don't love the Patriots. I've said this since the preseason. I started to respect them a bit, but after watching Thursday, I lost that respect once again. So I'm going to take the 49ers. I think they can get it done with Ayuk. Jawan Johnson had 45 fantasy points on Sunday. He was crazy. And Jordan Mason's been running the ball hard. The Niners defense, I think, is still pretty healthy. Javon Hargrave is out for the year now, so that's a pretty big loss. But for the most part, they still have their main guys, Bosa, Warner, Travarius Ward. So I have no concerns about their defense. I'll take the Niners minus 10. Cleveland Browns at the Raiders. It's the Raiders favored by 2. For some reason, I like the Browns to bounce back here. I know I just sat down and watched them last week for a full game, and Deshaun Watson sucks, but I think Cleveland will play great defense. The over-under the total in this game is 36.5 points. That has to be the lowest on this slate. That's a very low total, so it should be a low-scoring game. That favors the better defense, and as long as Watson's not terrible, they should win this game, so I'll take Cleveland plus 2 on the road. The Chiefs at the Chargers. The Chiefs are 7.5 point favorites on the road. You have a banged-up Chargers team, no Joe Alt. You have Gus Edwards looking washed. Derwin James got suspended for a game. Justin Herbert is questionable. He should play, but he's been very banged up this year. It's going to be tough for the Chargers to hang around. In division game, I could see it, of course, but I will take the Chiefs minus 7.5. If you can get that at 7 or even 6.5, I would probably bet a good amount on that one. I like the Chiefs a lot here. The Chargers just seem way too banged up right now. The Bills at the Ravens. Awesome game here. This is Sunday Night Football. The Ravens are 2.5 point favorites at home. For some reason, I really like the Ravens in this game. The whole nation just saw the Bills kick ass on Monday Night Football. There may be a bit of an overreaction to that because Jacksonville looked pretty broken once again. Not to take anything away because that type of performance is impressive against any team, but I still feel like the Bills might be slightly overrated at this point, and I think the Ravens right now just have more to play for. They are 1-2. The Bills are undefeated right now. They would only have to win by 3 or more, so I'll take the Ravens here minus 2.5. Monday night doubleheader. This is a same matchup from last year when Will Levis made that comeback. Titans at Dolphins. It's Dolphins minus 1. I picked Tennessee last week. Hate myself for it. They got destroyed by Malik Willis in that revenge game. I will take the Dolphins minus 1. It might be Skylar Thompson again. It might be Tyler Snoop Huntley. Not exactly sure. Don't really care. I'll take the Dolphins minus 1. They right now seem like the much better coached team. Brian Callahan's in his first year as a head coach, but still, I have not been too impressed. I will take the Dolphins minus 1. Seahawks at the Lions. It's the Lions favorited by 3.5. I do like Seattle in this game. I've liked the Seahawks a lot this year. They've gotten some breaks with their schedule. I can admit that, but Seattle has looked pretty good. I think Geno Smith has played very good football this year. Detroit doesn't look as dominant as they did last year, at least offensively. Jared Goff has not looked the same. So with that said, I think the Seahawks have a chance to win this game, so I'll take them at plus 3.5. So that just about does it. That's going to do it for this video, the Giants preview, the spread picks for week 4. Hopefully the Giants get this thing done, and we can react to a win tomorrow night, being 2-2. Of course, I don't expect that. I don't want to get my hopes up. I am cautiously optimistic. I feel like this team has played pretty well the past 1.5 out of 2 games because the second half in Cleveland wasn't too impressive, so I'll say 1.5 out of 2. But they look a lot better than week 1, which is all we could ask for. So anyway, that'll do it. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll talk to you guys next time.